What if I told you that for nearly 3 centuries, Greek kings ruled parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan? That Greek cities stood along the Ammu Darya? That coins in Punjab carried Greek and Indian scripts side by side? That the first human image of the Buddha may have been carved by artists trained in the tradition of Apollo? This is not a footprint in history. This is the story of the Indo-Greeks. The forgotten heirs of Alexander, who built a civilization at the very edge of the known world. When Alexander the Great marched east in the 4th century BC, he shattered empires, but he also planted seeds. After his death, in 323 BC, his generals divided his empire. In the far eastern province of Bactria, roughly modern northern Afghanistan and southern Uzbekistan, Greek settlers found themselves thousands of miles from the Aegean. They were no longer campaigning, they were stranded. And instead of retreating, they built. By the 3rd century BC, Bactria became one of the wealthiest Hellenistic kingdoms. Its capital cities were not crude frontier outposts, they were deeply, stubbornly Greek. Take Iconium. Excavation there revealed a Greek-style theater, a gymnasium, Corinthian columns, inscriptions quoting Delphic maxims like "Know thyself." Imagine standing on the Onis River, today's Ammu Darya, with the Hindu Kush rising behind you and hearing recitations of Homer. The gymnasium wasn't just a sports center, it was culture resistance. Young men trained in wrestling and athletics in the Greek fashion. Education was steeped in philosophy. It was a psychological fortress. To remain Greek was an act of identity, but the Greeks in Bactria were a minority ruling over Bactrians and Sogdians. They couldn't rule by nostalgia alone. Their kings, the Basileus, adopted a dual political identity. To their Greek subjects, they were traditional Hellenistic monarchs, wearing the diadem, sacrificing to Zeus. To the local population, on the other hand, they respected local cults and deities. Their coins tell the story. They were masterpieces of political messaging, strong portraits, divine symbolism, military imagery. But those coins circulated in a multi-ethnic society. Trade routes linked them to India, to Central Asia, even indirectly to China. Slowly, interaction began to shape them. Then came pressure from the north, nomadic migrations, instability. In the 2nd century BC, the center of gravity shifted. Greek rulers crossed the Hindu Kush into Gandhara and the Punjab. This was not just expansion, it was transformation. In Bactria, they tried to remain an island of Greece. In South Asia, they became part of a river. The climate changed from arid steppe to monsoon-fed plains. The culture changed from Iranian plateau traditions to deeply layered South Asian religious and social systems. Adaptation was no longer optional. One of the clearest signs of this transformation is linguistic. Indo-Greek coins show Greek inscriptions on one hand and Kharosthi script on the other. Greek titles translated into Praktric. This was revolutionary. It meant they were no longer just kings of the Greeks, they were kings of the land. Bilingual administration suggests trilingual realities. Governance required negotiation. This was political pragmatism at its finest. And then came the most fascinating transformation of all. The Greeks encountered Buddhism. Imagine this meeting. Greek philosophical traditions shaped by Plato and Aristotle, Buddhist metaphysics exploring impermanence, suffering, and liberation. This was not passive observation. It was intellectual engagement. One Indo-Greek king Menander I appears in Buddhist texts as Milinda. The Milinda Panha records a philosophical dialogue between King Milinda and the monk Nagasena. The questions are sharp, logical, Greek in style, but the answers are Buddhist. Whether fully historical or partially literary, the symbolism is powerful. This was not civilizational clash. This was dialogue. Before the Greeks, Buddhist art avoided depicting the Buddha in human form. He was symbolized by footprints, by an empty throne, by the Bodhi tree. Then, in Gandhara, something radical happened. The Buddha acquired a face, and that face looks remarkably Hellenistic. Wavy hair, idealized proportions, heavy naturalistic folds of robes, serene classical features reminiscent of Apollo. This was not imitation. It was synthesis. Greek sculptural realism met Buddhist spirituality. The result? Greco-Buddhist art. And this style would travel along the Silk Roads, influencing depictions of the Buddha in Central Asia, China, Korea, and Japan. The visual language of East Asian Buddhism carries a Hellenistic fingerprint. In cities like Taxila and Sagala, modern Sialkot, Greeks lived as a distinct but integrated elite. South Asian texts refer to the Yavanas as skilled engineers and makers of war machines, but socially there was tension. To Orthodox Brahmins, they were Malecha, outsiders beyond the ritual order. Yet, their political power demanded accommodation. Some were classified as fallen Kshatriyas. This allowed a social compromise. Power reshapes hierarchy. Perhaps the clearest sign of deep integration stands in central India. The Heliodorus Pillar, erected around 113 BC by a Greek ambassador, but the dedication is not to Zeus. It is to Vasudeva, Vishnu. Heliodorus calls himself a Bhagavata, a devotee. By this point, identity had blurred beyond recognition. Greek by ancestry, Indian by devotion, hybrid by reality. By the 1st century BC, waves of nomadic groups, the Sakas, later the Kushans, swept into the region. Greek kingdoms fractured. Coin inscriptions grew corrupted. Art declined in precision. Royal portraits became generic. But this was not disappearance. This was absorption. The Kushans adopted Bactrian language. They continued Gandharian art. They inherited trade networks. The Greek dissolved into the fabric of Central and South Asia. The Yavanas became memory. Today, the ruins of stupas in the Savat Valley, the serene Gandharan Buddhas in the museums, the generic traces in the Hindu Kush, all whisper the same truth. Civilizations are not sealed containers. They are conversations. The Greeks at the edge of the world did not remain purely Greek, and South Asia did not remain untouched. Instead, at the meeting of the steppe and monsoon, of Olympus and the Eightfold Path, something entirely new was born. Not east, not west, but a shared horizon.